There we go. So we're going to go ahead into this chapter and conclude it. And there are many parts. There were 2 or 3 parts that I really enjoyed this chapter. And the many pages about doubt, I think, was my very favorite. And I want to encourage you to reread those more than once, to just really consider those. And I'll be asking you some questions about that. And Sankyo Rinpoche begins on page 125 talking about wisdom. And where do we get wisdom? How does wisdom come about? How do we become more wise? And we've talked about this in many different classes, but we're going to talk about it in detail in reference to death and dying. But we gain wisdom inside by listening or reading, by contemplating, and then by meditating. So we listen first. We contemplate, we question, we analyze what it is we have just heard. Do we believe that, for instance? And then we meditate on it. We meditate on the understanding that we've gained until that understanding becomes one with our mind. So listening, often in Buddhist, especially the Tibetan tradition, involves repetition. We repeat things over. We remind ourselves over and over. And there is this part of us that as we listen to the teachings and as we read the teachings, there's a part of it that thinks that is so familiar. Not familiar that we heard it last year, familiar like it's been a part of us lifetimes ago. It's like as if you're coming home sort of feeling. And that particularly was true for me when I met Buddhist teachings. It made no sense to me. I did not understand what I was hearing, but what I was hearing and what I was seeing was as if I had heard and seen it many times before, which seemed utterly impossible because I had not ever seen any of it in this lifetime. So truly listening is quite hard because you have to set aside all your preconceptions, your ideas that you understand that already. And at the beginning, the beginner's mind is the best because the beginner's mind is open to trying to understand what's being said. It is that mind that hears it again and again and again that thinks, I know. And that becomes a huge obstacle. Listening without any preconceived ideas, each time as if it were something fresh and new, is a delight that you can have. Being able to practice that, you'll feel delight in your body when you wake up in the morning and it's another new day. It's another new hour. It's another new hour, another new moment. And those freshnesses keep us very present and joyful in our day-to-day life. So it is hard. It's as if you have to hear with your ears. It's like a changing of what's normal. Or see with your mouth. Or it's just like the opposite. So I was always told we have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. So 2 ears are far more necessary and important than the mouth. So listen. Listening is a skill. And as you listen, you begin to loosen your preconceived ideas. When you listen with that newness, there's more room inside, that openness, as if there always is room for someone else's ideas, someone else's opinions, someone else's voice. You make room over and over and over again. So within listening, what you're going to find is a silence. It is not a silence that is a lack. Instead, it is a silence that the truth can be heard. And when you hear that truth, you will feel it. It is the same place that love comes from. It is the same place that compassion comes from, joy comes from. This place is something that you know, but it comes from the silence, the stillness of your mind. I wanted to read something on page 126. And here there's a quote from Diglo Kensei Rinpoche. The more and more you listen, the more and more you hear. The more and more you hear, the deeper and deeper your understanding becomes. The deepening of understanding then comes through contemplation and reflection, the second tool of wisdom. So there's 3 tools of wisdom: listening, contemplating, and meditating. So, understanding is then brought to a deeper level by the second tool, contemplation. And contemplation, you reflect on what it is you heard. First of all, do you understand it? Does it make sense? Is it complete in what you heard? And then you reflect over and over, and some understanding begins to dawn, something that you didn't understand perhaps before. And there's questions that we can ask. How is this true in my day-to-day life? Can I understand this? Do I understand this? Do I see the continuum, the interdependent relationship of all things in relation to what it is that I'm hearing? So these questions are very useful as you're contemplating, being able to actually question what it is you're learning. The enlightened mind is not different than, this is very important, the enlightened mind is not different than your day-to-day experience. It's only we do not experience our day-to-day life fully awake because we have this ignorance veiling. And the only way that we can actually break through it is to question it, to begin to consider other ways of thinking. So we oftentimes are misled in our experiences because we're drawn to liking some things and disliking others. We identify with things. We believe we are things. So meditation then is the third wisdom tool. It's the vehicle that brings that understanding finally to be our way of being in the world, our reality. So listening begins the dawn of understanding, contemplating deepens the understanding, and then meditating brings it home, where that understanding actually becomes part of our mind, not separate from our mind. It's like closing in on the gap. So mixing the understanding until the mind of understanding arises. So we live with uncertainty. Human beings can use that uncertainty to wear away the wish that things will stay the same, that trick that we keep playing on ourselves, or the belief that we are this. Meditation is a tool. It's not like every day your meditation gets better and better. What it does, begin to do meditation every day, twice a day, 3 times a day. Every day meditation will start to bring about an awareness that you will have of that stillness where things can be heard, where joy can be experienced, where love can be experienced, where laughter can be experienced, where crying can be experienced. It's a part of us that lies hidden. But when it is clear, we are aware of it and we've known it. We know it. It's not something entirely new. So I'm going to spend the rest of the time talking about doubt. Doubt. I want you to think about a doubt that you've had in the recent past in relationship to the teachings. And as you're thinking about this, can you recall what that doubt did? So I just went through a bunch of doubt, and I was in Trout Lake, and I was being accused of things, and I could not retaliate. I couldn't say, oh, this is what happened, not that. Or I couldn't say, oh, well, what was also happening, I could say nothing. And I began to doubt my teacher. I began to doubt my experience. It was an awful place. And when that kind of doubt takes place, it's just sort of like a train running down track, a loose car running down track. And it gains momentum. And with the momentum that it gains in negativity, separation from yourself and from the teachings. So doubt can go two ways. There can be doubt that lends itself toward the truth, questioning something, being able to understand something or ask for understanding. I don't think that's what I believe. Can you tell me more about that? That will lend toward the truth. Questioning is a very big part of Buddhist teachings. But the kind of doubt that questions with sarcasm or criticism is the type of doubt that runs away from the truth and is really an awful place to be. Those two minds, the mind running toward truth, doubting and questioning, wanting to understand, or the mind running away from truth, criticizing, being sarcastic. Those two minds feel entirely different as you experience them internally. I want to read a little bit more from the book. There's a story that is about Sangha Rinpoche getting a ride from France to Italy. And when I just want to go back, the difference between the two minds, doubt lending itself to the truth, is a mind that's curious. A curious mind is some freshness to it. But the mind that is tight, the mind that is critical or indifferent, that's a very different feeling. So I want you to think about your truth in that relationship. So let me read on page 129. I remember one winter, I'm actually reading from the bottom of page 128, when I was driving with one of my students from Paris down to Italy on a clear and moonlit night. She worked as a therapist and had undergone many different kinds of training. What she had realized, she told me, was the more knowledge you have, the more doubts it gives rise to, and the subtler the excuses for doubting whenever the truth begins to touch you deeply. She had tried many times, she said, to run away from the teachings, but finally she realized that there was nowhere to run to, because what she was really trying to run away from was herself. I told her that doubt is not a disease, but merely a symptom. Listen very carefully. It's a symptom of a lack of what we in our tradition called the view, which is the realization of the nature of mind, and so of the nature of reality. When the view is there completely, there will be no possibility for the slightest trace of doubt. For then we'll be looking at reality with its own eyes. But until we reach enlightenment, I said, there will inevitably be doubts, because doubt is a fundamental activity of the enlightened mind. And the only way to deal with doubts is neither to suppress nor indulge them. Doubt demands from us a real skillfulness in dealing with them. And I notice how few people have any idea how to pursue doubts or to use them. Isn't it ironic that in a civilization that so worships the power of deflation and doubt, hardly anyone has the courage to deflate the claims of doubt itself? To do as one Hindu master said, turn the dogs of doubt on doubt itself, to unmask cynicism, to uncover the fear, despair, hopelessness, and tired conditioning it springs from. Then doubt would no longer be an obstacle, but a door to realization. And whenever doubt appeared in the mind, a seeker would welcome it as a means of growing or going deeper into the truth. So when we doubt and we feel that kind of negativity, oftentimes, if we're honest, we'll find that that is fear. And what we're being asked to do is similar to what Pema Chodron teaches, is that you turn and you face doubt. You go into the fear itself. And as you do that, it deflates it. And as we turn away from, it inflates. And so we have to be able to reconcile how silly we are sometimes and to learn the habit energy necessary to pursue doubt in the sense that you go into it. You turn the dogs of doubt on doubt itself. I love that. So don't let us take doubts with exaggerated seriousness or let them grow out of proportion or become black and white or fanatical. So I think that is very useful. Very, very useful. He goes on to say that not to let your doubts or to have unreasonable expectation with your doubts. So we have many, many doubts. We're not going to just give up that type of negative doubting immediately. But what we can do is little by little, when we know we're doubting and when we can feel that tightness or that turning away from ourselves, turn toward the doubt itself. Look into the fear. Look into the part of us that is recoiling from something. And it's always good to have realistic expectations, to just pursue it as we can, to make a determination or an intention to catch our doubt without it sort of surprising us, to see it in action. So do pay attention, because unattended doubt can become such a serious obstacle. It's actually one of the most serious obstacles on the path. Reread the pages about doubt specifically. Reread 125 to 130, and we'll move on to chapter 9, the spiritual path. Thank you very much. We dedicate what we have done for others. May others also have the ability to work together, to connect to each other, and to be there for themselves in the stillness that they create. The place in the stillness where joy, laughter, love, and compassion come from. Wisdom comes from that same place. Through those three tools, we dedicate that all people will have the ability to listen as a beginner, to reflect, and then to meditate. Thank you, friends.